let any of the staff know if you have any questions. And if you guys need any water or anything during the time we are talking, just put your hand up too. Perfect, but ask any of the staff. We're all here for you guys tonight as well. So now I'd like to introduce Andrew.
Alright, g'day everyone. It's a sort of surreal time for me at the moment because if anyone had said anything about me speaking to a group of people about what's happened this year for me, if someone had said that last year, I would have thought you were crazy. But it's a big change. If you met me this time last year, you would have been meeting a very different person to what you are meeting tonight. For the physical point of view, this shirt I couldn't have any chance of buttoning this up 7 months ago, and now it's even a little bit big for me. And these pants, same goes, and now they're too big for me. So those are big changes. But also, beginning of last year, I was diagnosed with clinical depression and anxiety, and life was not good. I was crying nearly every day for reasons, who knows, I don't know. I just was. And yeah, my outlook on life was pretty bleak. So to say that life has changed is a massive understatement. So I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about how that's happened. So basically, I've been overweight all my life, and including while I was an elite athlete in long distance kayaking. I've won Australian championships in long distance kayaking, and during that time I was still 5 to 10 kilos overweight, which was at the time probably the difference between being one of the better kayakers in Australia to maybe being one of the better in the world. But that's history, and we'll never know. But it's something looking back on, would have been nice to know then what I know now about diet. But anyway, so I was in November last year. I was sitting on the couch and contemplating my experiences with food over my life, and thinking about how I would have times where I would take up a new diet, and this goes for any diet you can think of. I've tried them all, including juice fast, water fast, all of that, and I would be very good for a month or 2 months, and I would be able to follow what I was doing, and then I would start to feel like I was under control, and I would think, yeah, okay, I'm ready now to start trying to eat more in moderation, and maybe I'll just try that piece of chocolate cake tonight, and it'll be fine because I'm under control. And sure enough, a bit of chocolate cake would play in my mind for a week or 2 weeks, or however long I could hold off before I did it again, and then it would just become more and more regular, and sure enough, I'd be back into my old ways and putting the weight back on, and slipping back into just old bad habits. And so sitting on the couch this afternoon in November, I realised that sort of behaviour was very similar to the way an alcoholic or a drug addict would behave, in that you've probably all heard stories before of a drug addict or an alcoholic who would quit alcohol for, say, 2 months, 3 months, and then just when they think everything's under control, they would have a beer, go, okay, I think everything's good, I'm strong, I can have a beer, and just one beer won't hurt, it's all good. And then soon enough, they're waking up in the gutter with no memory of what happened the night before, and they're back to their old drinking habits or things like that. And it struck me that we never tell alcoholics or drug addicts that a little bit of alcohol is okay in moderation, or a little bit of heroin just once a week, whatever, it's all good. No one ever. It's a ludicrous idea, and I started wondering about why don't we think of food addicts in the same way as we think of alcoholics and drug addicts, and why don't we treat them in a similar way? And to me, it's a very similar thing. When most people would agree that having a beer can be fun, and maybe whatever drugs people are into, they can be fun once in a while. But for me, the point of addiction comes when something that started off as fun becomes detrimental, and you know that it's detrimental, and you do it anyway. And that's, to me, I don't know if that's a technical term for addiction, but to me that makes sense. And if you're eating bad foods and you know they're bad for you and you keep doing it, I think you've got some sort of addiction problem there. So yeah, I got to thinking, why don't we treat them the same way? Then I started thinking, well, maybe we can. Maybe it hasn't been done, so maybe we can treat them the same way. I wonder if obviously, I knew you can't quit food like you can alcohol or drugs, but I thought maybe you can quit all foods except one. Maybe there's a food that you could get as close as possible to quitting food and just eat that one type of food, and it'll keep you healthy and keep everything working properly, and then you can treat your problem in the same way that an alcoholic or drug addict would in that way. So I started doing lots of research, and I came across a guy called Dr. John McDougall and his book, The Starch Solution. I read about the diet of the Irish population for a couple of centuries. They lived off mostly potatoes, not all potatoes like me, but mostly potatoes, and they thrived and went through a population boom. I read about the diet of the Incas. They were very high potato diet, and the Papua New Guinean Highlanders to this day are eating a diet of mostly sweet potatoes. The Okinawan diet, where they've got the most centenarians in the world, they eat mostly purple sweet potato. That's a huge part of their diet. And I read some science as well. I read about a couple in the 1920s who went for 6 months getting basically all of their nutrition from potatoes. And I think this is a while ago, I did the research now, but they were marathon runners and they ran personal bests at the end of 6 months of just potatoes. And I also read about a guy in the US who did 60 days of just potatoes, and everything went well for him. So that there's a lot of research I did, a lot of books I read, and a lot of scientific studies I read, documentaries I watched, and lectures from world-renowned nutrition scientists like Dr. McDougall and Dr. Neil Barnard and Caldwell Esselstyn and Dr. Michael Greger and others. Dr. Clapper, who was here last time. So basically it was about a 6-week process, and then and before I decided it was possible, and at that point in time I was thinking I would do a month or two and then try to transition back to a more whole food plant-based way of eating after a month or two. But the process of that research just happened to finish, and my decision was made about 3 days before New Year's Day. So, like any good dieter who says, oh, I'll start my diet Monday, I said, I'll start my diet January 1st. And so I waited for 2 or 3 days, and during that time the idea came to my head that, hey, maybe I could just do it for the whole year. And I don't really know why. I can't justify that, and I still can't justify it, but I didn't, like I said earlier, I was in a really bad place still at that point in time, and my outlook on life wasn't good, and I just had this feeling that doing it for a year was just something I should do, and I didn't really, I couldn't put it into words then, and I still can't, but there was just this feeling that, yeah, this is right, let's do it for a year, and let's just see what happens. And I also thought that I probably wouldn't be able to do it for the year, but I just knew I wanted to try. And it seemed like an impossible goal, but I just wanted to give it a try and see what would happen. So yeah, during all that research, I learned a lot about nutrition as well. I learned about the myth of how much protein people think we need to eat. I learned that potatoes have protein. About 6 to 8% of the calories in a potato comes from protein, which is more than enough. And yeah, the potatoes have got fat as well, and they've got plenty of iron, plenty of vitamin C, plenty of calcium. All these things that people are worried about, there's plenty of it in potatoes. Lots of fibre. Yeah, they're a magical food. But anyway, it's not about potatoes. It's about the idea behind it was basically about trying to fix my relationship with food. So I had an obsessive sort of relationship with food where if I was eating healthy, I was good at eating healthy from time to time, but while I was eating healthy, I'd be obsessing over when my next meal was going to come from, and I'd be and when I did eat junk, which wasn't every day, but when I did eat it, I would eat way too much, and so the idea was to just take a break from food basically, and try to give myself some time to be able to work on whatever was going on in my mind. So yeah, so I started on January 1st, weighing 151.7 kilos, And that weight was actually at the end of the day, so I don't know, maybe it was more at the start of the day. But I didn't own scales, so we bought them that day. And anyway, so right now I weigh 107.6, and yeah, that's like that belt. That was almost too small at the start of the year. And that's so it's quite a big change. My blood pressure's dropped, my cholesterol's dropped. My blood sugars are all good. Everything's really good, and so I think we can say that potatoes are a healthy food to eat. A lot of people are worried about putting on weight from eating too many carbs and all that sort of thing, and I've been eating 3.5, sometimes 4 kilos of potatoes a day, getting mostly over 3,000 calories a day from potatoes, and not going hungry at all. I'm not restricting in any way. I'm just eating as much as I feel like, and I've lost all that weight in the process. So, yeah, potatoes are good for health. Let's put it that way. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about how I've managed to survive mentally, basically. So, before I was starting, I was thinking, you know, for a food addict, it was a scary idea to give up all of my favourite foods, literally all of my favourite foods, for an entire year. And I wasn't sure that it was something I wanted to do, and I was contemplating whether I could do it, whether I should do it, whether I'd want to do it. And I had this thought that, because it felt like a huge sacrifice for me to give up all that. It felt like it was a massive sacrifice. And I had this thought that if you don't sacrifice for what you want, then what you want becomes the sacrifice. And what I mean by that is that if I'm not going to sacrifice to get the health rewards that I want and to get the psychological relationship with food that I want, if I'm not going to give up something for that, then that thing that I'm trying to get will be sacrificed. And I think it's the same all through life when we're talking about giving up something to get something else. Elite athletes talk about sacrifice in order to, or the Olympics coming up, they make a lot of sacrifices in order to chase a gold medal. And I don't think it's about sacrifice. I don't think it's a choice between sacrifice and not sacrifice. It's just two different sacrifices that you're choosing between. So that was a big moment for me, realising that do I want to sacrifice my health, or do I want to sacrifice a nice meal at a nice restaurant? And to me, that was a pretty easy choice when I put it that way. I have lots of people asking me about how I deal with cravings, and so I'll just go through a few little different things that I do for cravings, and then it's probably my time up. But so there's a few different things I've done. The first trick I came up with was that when I was craving a bit of chocolate cake or a pizza or whatever it was in the first couple of weeks, I would, rather than telling myself, no, you're not having that, you're never going to have it again, I would instead of that, I would go, no problem, you can eat that. Playing a little mental trick on myself, but no problem, you can eat the chocolate cake, you can eat the pizza, that's fine. But before you do that, we're going to eat a big plate of boiled potatoes. And so I would just, that way it would sort of just quiet the argument going on in my head. So, you know, you got the devil on one shoulder, the angel on the other, they're fighting it out, trying to see who's going to win and what food you're going to eat. Let's just quiet that argument. Yes, you can eat it, but first eat a big plate of potatoes. So I'd go and do that, fill up on potatoes, and sure enough, by the time I finish that plate, I don't want anything else. So you could put a chocolate cake in front of me and I'd go, I'm full, I don't need it. It's all good. So that was a good tactic. And another one was who's seen The Matrix? Yeah. So there's a cool scene in The Matrix near the beginning where Neo gets in the car with Trinity and the other couple of people, and one of them turns around, has got a gun on him, and they've got to try and get a bug out of him, and he starts freaking out that this is a bit crazy. I got to get out of the car. So they stop the car. He opens the door and looks down. The camera looks down a long, dark, rainy lane, and he looks down there, and he's about to get out of the car, and Trinity grabs his arm and says, "Trust me, Neo." And he says, "Why?" And she goes, "Because you've been down that road before. You know where it leads, and I know that's not where you want to go." So, and that was a scene I replayed in my head lots and lots of times when that choice would come up of, do you want to eat this piece of crap over here, or do you want to eat the delicious piece of crap, by the way?
Yeah.
Do you want to have that amazing foodgasm eating experience, or do you want to eat the boring potatoes? And I would replay that scene in my head and think, you know exactly what's going to happen if you make that bad choice. You know exactly the downward spiral that you're going to be starting on. You've done it loads of times before. You know exactly where it leads to. Is that really where you want to go? And when I talk myself through it like that, take the 10 to 15 seconds to talk myself through it like that, made the choice easy. And another tactic was what I talked about before, choosing between sacrifices. And the last one was something I've only been able to really put into words in the last month was, and I wrote a blog post on it the other night actually, was it's about just engaging fully with emotional eating. A lot of people talk about emotional eating, and I think when we're focusing on the emotions around the food that we eat, it's we tend to focus on the experience that we're going to have. So I always come back to chocolate cake. Can you tell that was a favourite? But so when you're thinking, well, when I was thinking about I want to eat the chocolate cake, my focus is all on the immediate experience that I'm going to have from eating the chocolate cake. It's going to be great. It's going to feel good in my mouth. It's going to set off little fireworks in my head. There's, you know, the party in your mouth, that sort of thing. And we think about those sorts of things, and we neglect the overall emotional experience that goes with that food. So I think we're unfair on ourselves when we focus on that little eating experience. And what I think we need to do is embrace the entire emotional experience that goes with that choice. And that's, so think about the experience of eating the chocolate cake, but then think 10 minutes down the track, how are you going to feel then? And you're going to feel, you know, shame and regret and guilt if you're like me. And then how are you going to feel tomorrow? Well, you're going to feel a little bit sluggish because you had a crap meal and it was hard to digest, and maybe you didn't sleep as well as you could. And fast forward 6 months down the track, how are you going to feel when you've made that choice 3-4 times a week for the following 6 months? When maybe you're 5 to 10 kilos heavier, you're a little bit more depressed than you were, you're a little bit less healthy than you were. And then and I think it's important to just bring all of those emotions into the moment, and including the good experience of eating the chocolate cake, bring them all into the moment and just sit for 30 seconds and think about and feel those emotions and really try and experience them and get to know them. And then once you've done that, think about a plate of potatoes or a salad or bananas or whatever it is that you're eating or that you're choosing as your healthy plan, and then and think about that eating experience. And yeah, it's fine to acknowledge that the eating experience itself might not be so exciting and enjoyable, and there might not be the fireworks in your head, but how are you feeling after it? You're feeling great. You made a good choice. Your self-esteem's already got a little boost because you've done something good for yourself, and the next day you've got a little spring in your step, and you're starting to feel good because you had a great night's sleep, and your food's digested well, and your body's already starting to heal itself. And then think 6 months down the track, when you've made that good choice repeatedly, well, if you're like me, then life's totally different. So you bring all those emotions together and experience them all at the same time, and let those emotions all sit in your soul and feel them properly. Then the choice becomes easy, and it's really not even a choice anymore. So that, in hindsight, I was doing that sort of thing from the start of the year, but I really haven't been able to put it in words properly recently. So yeah, the year's been a crazy, amazing year, and I've been on media all over the world, and TV and radio in I don't know how many countries, and and life's totally different, and it's all because of deciding to quit food and eat potatoes. So yeah, I think, is that long enough? I think that's probably time's up.
Yeah,
Does anyone,
some questions.
yeah, anyone have any questions? Or?
Congratulations.
Oh.
First of all, congratulations. It's
Thank
amazing.
you.
You must feel a lot better in yourself, like you're saying.
Yeah.
How do you feel psychologically about the next stage of your
Good question.
relationship with
So the next stage, well, the food first of all. If anyone doesn't know what the Starch Solution diet is, the Dr. McDougall, the whole food plant-based diet, that's the plan for next year. And it remains to be seen what happens when I do make that change, but at the moment I feel really 100% confident that the way I think about food has totally changed, and to the point where when people ask me what my first meal is going to be, I haven't got an answer because I don't really care. Like, there's no foods that I miss, and food is fuel for me these days. So it's I feel like I've developed skills that I never had before, and my whole thought process about food and about life in general is not what it's ever been before. So yeah, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy. I'm sure it's going to have its challenges, but I feel like I have the tools that I'm ready to face those challenges, and I feel like I'll be successful. So yeah.
Just a quick question. I wasn't clear you were talking about junk food and eating that previously.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. Did you have you gone from eating meat and dairy as well as the junk food, and then you already didn't eat meat?
No, we've been vegan for 8 years or so, and yeah, when we first went vegan, over probably the first couple of months, I lost quite a bit of weight then, and in hindsight, I didn't understand it at the time, but in hindsight it was because we were eating a whole food plant-based diet, but mostly because we had yet to discover all the amazing vegan junk food you can get. So once we settled into veganism and then started figuring things out and trying all these different restaurants that we didn't know existed, then, you know, vegan pizza, vegan cake, vegan ice cream, vegan chocolate bars, vegan everything, you can get it all. So yeah, so hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I didn't realise at the time what was happening. So
that makes it even more powerful that it's you haven't gone from being meat and dairy eater straight to let's eat potatoes.
Yeah.
The fact that you can be vegan and
that says a lot about the unhealthiness of added oils, I think, because sugars are bad too. I think everyone agrees that, like added sugars I'm talking about, but oils are a real problem, and I really think this year it's been more about what I haven't eaten than what I have. That potatoes are great, they're amazing, but I think it's been more about getting rid of things out of my diet rather than eating potatoes specifically. Speaking of the devil.
This is the moment. There's the moment. That's what it is.
Did you only eat boiled potatoes?
No, I do eat boiled potatoes, yeah, that's a big part of it, and I also eat baked potatoes and mashed potatoes, and I do also have like a little bit of herbs and spices and maybe some tomato sauce or barbecue sauce just for a little bit of flavour, but I keep all that stuff pretty minimal. It's,
as well as sweet potato?
Sweet potatoes as well, yeah. And, but yeah, no oil at all, no butter, no cream, nothing like that. It's really just plain potatoes, cooked with no oil and a little bit of herbs and spices, and a minimal amount of maybe tomato sauce or chili sauce or something like that. So yeah, it's a pretty basic diet. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question about, do you have any coping strategies on your social network? Because I've gone from meat, dairy to now being vegan, vegetarian, and I find that my friends struggle with me the most. You know, they are the ones who are going, well, how can you live without this? And, you know, I'm completely fine. But do you have a coping strategy for, or how did you do it yourself?
No, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't really have a strategy. I guess I'm just 100% comfortable and confident in what I'm doing and happy with it. So, yeah, I don't really feel any pressure from anyone. And even if people did try to pressure me, I'm totally happy and comfortable with my choice. So I wouldn't. It wouldn't affect me, and
I think that. Sorry, I'm going to butt in as.
This is my wife.
Yeah,
so
sorry. Just, I think. Sorry, I'm going to butt in because I'm your wife. Is that what you said? Hang on.
I said you're my wife, so you know the answer.
Oh well, his answer. Sorry, my arms. I can't feel my arms right now. His friends and family have seen the difference in him is. I can't even. He's glowing. He's like a pregnant woman. Well, less like a pregnant woman in some ways, and more in others.
I used to look a lot like one.
Well, that's what I mean. His just demeanour, his whole everything is different about him, and you would never argue with that. Like you. No, I mean, if people at the start they were doubters and I just let him do it because he'd always tried lots of different things and nothing worked. But I thought, who's going to stop someone giving something else a go that might work? But and it's a bit antisocial in some ways, but you're very prepared everywhere you go. You you pack your spuds in case you can't.
And really, like if you go into a friend's place,
yeah, it's an easy dinner
Yeah,
yesterday. And someone said to me, "What are you feeding him?" I went,
what do you reckon?
"It's so easy."
Yeah.
friends never complain about cooking for me because how easy can it be? You just put potatoes in the oven and close it, and you're done. Like, no one's going to complain about having to feed you potatoes. It's all good.
So
you've been vegan for 8 years already, so all those kind of questions that you get.
Yeah, and when we first went vegan, we did it. We were living in Perth at the time, where we didn't know anyone, so that made it easier too, because we didn't have to explain our choice to friends every meal we had or whatever. We were just sort of in a cocoon over there, and then when we came back here, we were proper vegans, and there was no.
Yeah, we've been through it though, like it all the time. It's still now, really.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to say as well, the last few weeks I've actually started coaching on this as well, which has been quite an experience because over the course of the year I've had thousands of emails from all around the world of people looking for advice and help from me, and people have generally been really happy with how I've answered questions and how I've communicated with people, so it seemed a logical thing for me to start coaching. So I've had my first few coaching clients over the last couple of weeks, and that's been really cool too. And even looking at running some kind of retreat later in the year. So
a potato retreat.
A potato retreat, yeah.
You said you would have saved a lot of money, surely.
Yes, very cheap. The first 6 weeks I was just buying potatoes like everyone else, and it was really cheap, like less than $5 a day I was spending. But from about the end of the 6th week on, I've actually had a sponsorship from the local fruit and veg shop in. So I get free potatoes. So how goes that? Yeah.
Our budget's gone.
You mentioned earlier at the start about your relationship with food throughout your life.
Yeah.
Did you have the similar relationship, sort of addictive relationship to food as a child?
As long as I can remember, yeah.
As long as you remember, you had that kind of relationship.
Yeah. I couldn't. If I was eating something that was like amazing and delicious and sending fireworks off in my brain, I never wanted to stop eating it. Yeah, I'd eat until I couldn't walk anymore. Well, maybe not couldn't walk. That's taking it a bit far. But, I was eating a lot. Yeah.
Massive amounts of it.
Yeah.
It's just interesting from a perspective of how different people deal with food or addictions.
Yeah, definitely.
Ways.
Yeah, and I'm not here to say that the only way to do it is eating potatoes. This is something that's worked for me.
It's
and
an incredible tactic to discover that's worked. You have to try something.
Yeah, it just came from, like I said at the start, it was just a logical progression that try and treat it the same way as you treat alcohol or drug addiction.
That's a good mentality.
Nothing else? Alright, if anyone's interested in following, then spudfit.com is my website, and you can sign up for the newsletter if you want. And I'm not very good at writing them, but you might get one once a month or two. Yeah. So thanks everyone.